A new book is examining the Republican Party's revolution in Insurgency, how Republicans lost their party and got everything they ever wanted. New York Times correspondent Jeremy Peters writes the change happened over 2 decades. He explains the revolution was engineered by leaders able to manipulate American voters and says the key conductor of the change, of course, was former President Trump. And Jeremy joins me now from New York City. Jeremy, welcome. A couple of days ago, a spokesperson for former President Trump discussed the 2020 election on Steve Bannon's podcast. Quote, "This is not going away, and it is never going to go away until we get the correct result and fix our elections. It's just that simple. We still are getting more information about how fraudulent these elections were." Liz Harrington referred to elections plural. How does this issue complicate things for Republicans trying to look forward, as some say?
Well, I think the question is exactly how many Republicans want to look forward versus how many of those are willing to say, yes, we should be looking forward. Because if anything, what Donald Trump has done to the Republican Party, as I lay out in this book, is create an alternate reality in which the inconvenient truths are not spoken, they're glossed over. And that extends to everything from what happened in November 2020 to January 6th, 2021.
Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell is a frequent target of the former president. And yesterday, Trump said that neither McConnell nor South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace speak for the party. Does he have a point?
Well, I think right now this idea that there's a civil war in the Republican Party it's overblown in the sense that we already know who won. We've heard denunciations from Mitch McConnell before, just as we've heard and read editorials in the National Review or in the Wall Street Journal. They all have this is a familiar pattern. It's one that's existed since 2015 when Donald Trump stormed the national stage. There's always been an element of the Republican Party that's deeply uncomfortable with him. As we've seen, though, over the course of these 5-6 years, is those people have pretty much only spoken out when events rise to the urgency of the type we're seeing today, which is a level of detachment from reality that's so severe it actually may start impacting key Senate races. The House is a different story, but Mitch McConnell is very concerned that the types of swing voters who decided the presidential election in 2020, who broke overwhelmingly against former President Trump, that those voters will do so once again, break against Republicans because of all of the chaos and disinformation that Trump and his allies are injecting into our political discourse.
You write about the days leading up to and following January 6th. A number of Republicans like House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, Senator Ted Cruz, Ambassador Nikki Haley pointedly criticized President Trump for his role in the violence. You sat down with the former president. What did he say about that day?
It's as if it didn't really happen as we all saw it happen on television, right? I asked him pointedly, did it bother you to hear people saying they wanted to execute your vice president, your beseechingly loyal friend and lieutenant of 4 years? And Trump acted as if it wasn't real. Yes, he claimed to have heard the threats, but he insisted that this was just an expression, is the direct quote from my interview with him. And it just really kind of shows you the glossing over of this horrible moment in our nation's history that he and now other Republicans are engaging in order to hold on to political power. I mean, that's really.
Do you think he's in denial? Do you think he's in denial?
I think he believes that. If you can call that denial, I think it's more delusion. I spent enough time talking to him and covering him over the years that I think when I heard him talk about what he thinks happened in the 2020 election, what he thinks happened on January 6th, I think what he's done is he's convinced himself of his own lies. As somebody told me who worked very closely with him and is still very close to him. He's the guy who believes the lie as soon as it comes out of his mouth. He has this extraordinary capacity to talk himself into what he wants to be true. And in this case, what he wants to be true is that he did not lose, because to him, losing is failing, and there's nothing worse in his mind than being a failure. So that's why it's always somebody else's fault.
Did you get a sense of whether or not the former president will attempt a run in 2024 or simply continue with rallies alleging voter fraud?
So I did. And I've got to say, my answer is the same as it was when I first interviewed him a year ago. This is, about 6 weeks after January 1st when I first spoke to him. And I recall his anger being so palpable and his denial just being so blatant that I said to myself, and I said to anybody who asked me afterwards, I think if the election were tomorrow, he completely would run. Of course, the election's not tomorrow. I still believe that, and the election is still not tomorrow. But I think that unless something changes, unless he has a health reason, or if there's some type of financial reason, I don't see any type of legal reason that would prevent him from doing so, unless he gets barred from running by Congress, and I don't think that's very likely, because a legal fight is something that will energize him and his supporters, and he'll once again be able to claim persecution and rake in hundreds of millions of dollars of donations. So yes, I think it's more likely than not at this point that he runs.
The Republican Party used to be a loose coalition of social and fiscal conservatives with some libertarians. What defines the party today?
Trump. It's fealty to not just the man, which is, of course, doesn't extend to everybody in the party, even those who talk and act like Trump. But that's the real, that's what the Republican Party is really animated by and driven by, is this attitude. As somebody I spoke to interviewing for the book, the idea that the Republican Party used to be this three-legged stool, which is a term I'm sure you've heard before of the social conservatives, the fiscal conservatives, and the military hawks. Well, there's this fourth leg to that stool now that's all about attitude. It's about antagonization and pummeling your enemies and owning the libs. And that's what Trump has done to the Republican Party. And that is the controlling ethos of Republicans today.
Jeremy Peters, thank you.
Thank you.